Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our last session of Having Fun Learning English. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Jumana Tariq Abdurazik. I'm studying for a master's degree in petroleum engineering at University of Houston, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. Today, we're pleased to welcome Dr. Marie Jeanette Ebenhack. Dr. Marie Jeanette Ebenhack retired in 2012, having worked for so many years as a nonprofit administrator and religious educator. She holds degrees from Ministry in Religious Education from the School of Theology, Claremont and Princeton Theological Seminary. Prior to retirement, she served as the president and CEO for Ahead Energy, a nonprofit focused on assisting African schools and medical facilities to harness local energy resources to meet daily needs. She has been fortunate to travel widely and work with international students in various locales. With a minor in journalism from Macpherson College, she enjoyed writing books, articles, and editing publications. She has been involved in volunteer work everywhere she has lived, including Modesto, California, Fullerton, California, Bridgewater, Virginia, Rochester, New York, Marietta, Ohio, where she currently resides. Presently, Dr. Ebenhack is active in cultivating interfaith relations. And today, she will share with us her expert opinion in English language. If you haven't already, please make sure to check out our previous sessions on our YouTube channels, Pio Petro, Arab Guru, and Majesty, and join our Facebook page, Arab Oil and Gas Academy, Arab Guru, and Majesty for the latest updates on our upcoming courses. Please feel free to send your questions in the chat box and we'll answer as many questions as possible. With that, I ask you to give your full attention to Dr. Ebenhack and help me in welcoming today's very honorable guest. Please welcome Dr. Marie Jeanette Ebenhack. Hi, Dr. Ebenhack. Thanks for joining us today. We're so glad to have you on Majesty.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here also, and thank you for that very nice introduction. One little correction about being an expert in English. No, I'm probably, I'm an English speaker more than an English teacher. So we're muddling through here. So I do want to welcome the 12 of you 13 of you who are tuned in right now, and others who will be joining us later. So this is our last session. And previously, we've tried to look at nouns, adjectives, pronouns, and articles, synonyms, antonyms, contractions, and conjunctions. And this session, we're going to try to wrap up by looking at homophones, homographics, homonyms, verbs, and adverbs. So I know those are really big words, but we'll try to break them down and help you figure out what they are and how they can help you speak and write English. First of all, I want to say this is our 4th session, and it's being recorded on December the 1st. And so I want to invite all of you to wish Dr. Ahmed Algarhi a happy birthday. This is his birthday, December 1st. And so if you have a chance, wish him a happy birthday, or at least send him birthday wishes in your heart. So I want to give a shout out to Hazel Supple Hoover. Hazel Supple Hoover is my mother. And those of you who are observant may have noticed that in every single one of these sessions, I have worn this purple sweater. And you may be thinking, oh, that poor woman, she doesn't have a change of clothes. Well, actually, I do have a change of clothes, but I've chosen to wear this sweater because it's one of the few things that I own that belong to my mother. And as I told you in our very first session, my mother was an English teacher, and this picture that you see on your screen here is her college graduation picture. This is what she looked like when she started English, when she started teaching English. And this is what I look like on my one time when I have taught English. So the one thing that preparing these lessons has done for me is given me a new appreciation for my mother. Because even though she never formally taught me English, she modeled good English for me my whole life. And so I picked it up simply by hearing it. So having to go back and learn why you say things the way you do, I've, as I said, got a much bigger appreciation for her skills. So thank you, Mom, for that. So what is a shout out? We're going to talk a little bit about idioms for just a minute. A shout out is an idiom. You might hear this on late night shows, or it's kind of a common thing to say in America these days. I'm going to give a shout out to this. Well, a shout out is a quick public expression of thanks and admiration. So that's what I'm doing for my mom. I'm giving a shout out to her. And the definition of an idiom is an expression whose meaning does not correspond to the meaning of the words used. That is, an expression of appreciation. Why would you think that's a shout out? But it is. Same with kick the bucket. Everybody in English knows what that means. It doesn't mean that you are out with your foot kicking a bucket. It means that somebody has died. And the same thing with raining cats and dogs. It doesn't actually rain cats and dogs, but if you hear somebody say that, it means it's raining real hard. So that's what we mean by an idiom, and English is full of those idioms. Secondly, I want to talk a little bit today about making mistakes, because making a mistake does not mean that you are stupid. I want to remind you of what I said in the very first session, that children have a much easier time learning languages. And one of the reasons for that is that they don't get embarrassed when they make mistakes. They just learn from their mistakes. And so I want to remind you that what we're doing here, especially I'm reminding our moderators, because I'm going to ask them some questions. Getting something wrong doesn't mean anything other than you haven't learned that yet. So, when you make a mistake, you've got, an opportunity to learn something new, So I like this quote by Elbert Hubbard called, "The greatest mistake you can make in life is to be continually fearing that you will make one." There's a couple other quotes that I like. One says, "Making mistakes is better than faking perfection. Every mistake you make is progress when you learn from them. A life spent making mistakes is not only more honorable, but more useful than a life spent doing nothing." Well, I'm talking about mistakes this morning because I made a mistake in the last session. It was a teaching mistake, not a grammatical mistake. So permit me to correct this teaching mistake. Last time, when we were talking about synonyms, words that mean much the same as other words, I brought up this nursery rhyme. This is an old nursery rhyme that comes from England. It's probably 200-300 years old. And when I was growing up, this was in all the nursery rhyme books, and people learned it and recited it and so on. So I was using this nursery rhyme to talk about synonyms. Let me just read what the nursery rhyme says without changes. It says, "Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was he. He called for his pipe, and he called for his bowl, and he called for his fiddlers three. And what I asked people to do, including Dr. Algarhi, was to give me some synonyms for the words that are in red. And what I learned, and the mistake that I made, is you can't ask non-native English speakers for synonyms for archaic and difficult words. You have to really show them the words. So last time we talked about the thesaurus that is on your Microsoft applications, Word, Excel, it's even in PowerPoint and so on. So let's look at this first word, marry, because we had some problems understanding what marry is, particularly because it is a homophone. That means it sounds like other words, and we're going to talk about that a lot in this session. But synonyms for marry include happy, joyous, cheery, cheerful, jolly, joyful, laughing, gay, lively. And then the antonym down here would be miserable. That's the opposite word. The opposite of merry would be miserable. Okay, then let's talk about old. What are the synonyms for old? And I just have a portion here because, as I talked about before, a word will have multiple meanings. So this is just part of the meanings of old. Old could be old-fashioned, outdated, archaic, out of date, ancient, outmoded, so on. The one we're going for today is really aged, because we're talking about a person. What is a person who is old? What's another synonym for a person who is old? Well, it could be aged, elderly, older, mature, getting on with life, not getting any younger. The antonym is young. So that's the opposite of old. Another word that isn't in this line, but which is being used more here in the United States, at least, is senior. Senior citizens are older people. So that's another word that we could probably add to this thesaurus. Okay, so another word we have in this nursery rhyme is bold. So what is a synonym for bold? And actually, this is a little harder to come up with because there aren't a lot. And here's one called ball. Well, that's not really what we're talking about. We're really talking about a container. So another synonym for bowl could be container, vessel, dish, basin, perhaps wash basin, sink. Yeah, you have to be careful using that. Mixing bowl or pudding basin. I would guess that pudding basin must be an English word, because I've never heard that used before. So here's what we want to say now if we are changing some of these words and putting in synonyms. Old King Cole. Oh, actually, before I do that, there's one more word that we want to change. It says he called for his pipe, he called for his bowl, he called for his fiddler's three. So what are some synonyms for called? Shouted, screamed, yelled, exclaimed, cried, hollered. That's if you know you're really shouting. But also it could mean requested. And I think that's more of what we're doing here. So requested, summoned, invited, beckoned, appealed, or simply asked. Okay, so now let's go back and kind of fill in, with synonyms. And how does this nursery rhyme go? Old King Cole was a jolly elderly soul, and a cheerful senior was he. He asked for his pipe, and he requested his dish, and he summoned for his fiddlers three. So fiddlers are people that play the violin. So old King Cole wanted a pipe to smoke, he wanted a snack to eat, and he wanted some music to listen to. One other word that's in this nursery rhyme that we didn't look for synonyms for, but you might be confused by, is the word soul. And again, in current English, this is not a word that's used a lot. It really is more from the time period that this poem was designed. But a soul, in this sense, is an individual or a person, a human being, someone. Another definition of soul is like soul music. So it could be gospel, blues, funk. Soul music is something that came out of the United States. But we're really talking about the person. So just wanted to give you a little heads up about what we're talking about when we're talking about a merry old soul. Okay. Oh, yeah, here's some other definitions of soul. All right, so I've been looking forward to talking to you about homonyms, homophones, and homographics. So those are big words, but if you break down the words, they're not so difficult. Homo, I believe, is Latin for same, and nym is the Latin word for word. So same word. Homograph, same writing or same spelling. Homophone, same sound. So homonyms are two or more words that are pronounced the same and spelled the same, but they have different meanings. So if you have two words in whether it's a homonym, homograph, or homophone, they all mean something different. But in a homonym, the spelling is the same and you pronounce the word the same. I'm going to give you lots of examples of that. Now, a homophone is two or more words that are pronounced the same but have different spellings and different meanings. So jumping down here to the third line, a homophone, the meaning is different. The spelling is different, but the pronunciation is the same. So more about that later. And then homographic is two or more words that are spelled the same, but pronounced differently and have different meanings. So again, two words, different meanings. Their spelling is the same, but their pronunciation is different. Okay. So let's take a look at these because, I told you last time that with a plural, all you have to do is highlight it in your text and your spell checker will catch that. But when we're dealing with, when we're dealing with homonyms, homophones, and homographics, your spell checker is not going to catch these. They'll catch misspellings, but if you're using the wrong word, your spell checker won't catch it. Oops, sorry about it. Okay, before we go on to that, I wanted to just define what a verb is because I've been threatening to talk about verbs for 3 sessions and I've never gotten to it. But as we talk about homophones, homographs, and homonyms, we're going to need to understand what a verb is. So just very briefly, a verb is a word that shows action or a state of being. So airplanes travel fast. Travel is the verb there. It's what gives the action to that sentence. But verbs can also be a state of being. So if you're saying he is happy, is the verb. And that, just is like a state of being what he is. Okay. So verbs can be used in the present tense, the past tense, the future tense, and continuous action. And I love this little cartoon that says, time travel is going to have been confusing. Yes, indeed. All right, so let's look at some homonyms. And I'm using, again, a book by Brian P. Cleary. This one is entitled, How Much Can a Bear Bear? What are homonyms and homophones? Homonyms are words that sound and are also spelled alike, but they have different meanings, as in, can you pass me that Can, Mike? So let's just look at those two words, can. So the first one, can you pass me, is a verb, and it means, are you able to? Can you pass me that? Can you pass me the book? Can you pass me the can? And the can that this person wants passed is a metal food container, like a can of soup or a can of peaches or something else. So very same word. It's spelled the same. It's pronounced the same, but it has two different meanings. So let's look at some more. So this second stanza says, or may I sail with you in May and coast all along the coast. These words are a blast if you say them quite fast, like, why don't we toast with some toast? So let's look at these again. So, may I sail with you is asking a question. Am I permitted to sail with you? And this is a noun. It's a proper noun. It's the month, the 5th month of the year. So, may I sail with you in May? And coast, along the coast. So this is the verb. It means to travel under acquired momentum. So you're just coasting along. And the coast is a noun, which is the land that's next to a seashore. So coast, coast, same word, same pronunciation, but different meanings. And the last one, these words are a blast. If you say them quite fast, why don't we toast with some toast? So to toast is to drink in honor of someone or something, to have a little, cup of juice and say, here's to you. And toast is a slice of bread that has been toasted in a toaster. So again, two words, same spelling, same pronunciation. They mean different things. Light may be light, like a small paper kite. A trunk can be found in a trunk. An inchworm or snail could scale a scale. A lean cat could lean on a skunk. But punch cannot punch, and at breakfast or lunch, your jam cannot jam on a trumpet. A bowl cannot bowl, but a roll just might roll if it's not made as flat as a crumpet. So let's, again, quickly go over these. Light can be a noun, that is something that emits light, but it also can be an adjective. Something is not heavy, it's light. A trunk can be something that you put clothes in, but it also can be the trunk of a tree. So a trunk, that is something you put your clothes in, can be found in the trunk of a tree. Here's another one that's a little confusing. Scale and scale. Oh, I didn't do that one, so let's go on. Lean. A lean cat means a skinny cat. Could lean, that's a verb, to lean on something. Punch is something you drink, or it's something that you do with your fist. Jam is something you eat. And jam on a trumpet, that's a word from jazz. It means improvise on a trumpet. Play your trumpet, just from your head. A bowl, we've talked about a bowl. We know what a bowl is. And the other word is like if you're going bowling. So you're throwing a ball down the lane. So bowl and bowl. And finally, roll and roll. A roll is something you eat or something you can roll a ball. So I think you get what a homonym is. So let's go on to homophones. So Brian Cleary writes, now some words sound identical, but are spelled in different ways. These words are known as homophones, like praise and praise and praise. So let's look at those words. 3 ways to spell a word that sounds exactly the same. So what is praise? praise, is a verb to express approval or admiration for something. So we might say, children desire praise from their parents. Preys is a third person singular verb. It means to hunt and eat. So a cougar will prey, as they're preying on squirrels and mice and so on. Our cats prey on the moles and the chipmunks around our house. You might say a fox preys on rabbits. Preys. And then prays is the third person singular about offering prayer. So you might say, she prays for forgiveness. So again, 3 words that sound alike, but they're spelled differently. And people will understand when you write them that you're saying something differently. So let me just read this other stanza. Though homophones have matching sounds, their meanings aren't the same, and there isn't any question. They're as fun as any game. I do like homophones. They're fun. So here's just a few more examples of homophones. A bee can be, a flea can flee, a burrow can burrow a hole. A horse can get hoarse from talking, of course. A ewe could take you on a stroll. But the sea cannot see, and it's clear as can be, that a ball will not bawl when it's rolled. A moose has no use for a bottle of mousse, and a creek doesn't creak when it's old. So just very quickly, I'm not going to belabor this. Bee is a noun, it's a little flying insect. Be is a verb. Flee is another little insect that gets on your cats and your dogs. Flee is a verb that means to leave. Horse is an animal that we race or ride. And horse with an A in there is an adjective that means you've got something wrong with your throat. Ewe is a noun. It is a female sheep. A ewe is a female sheep as opposed to a ram. And you, of course, is a pronoun. SEA is that great big body of water that you sail a ship on. And SEE is the verb that says what you do with your eyes. You know what a ball is that you bounce? To bawl is a verb that means to cry. It's a synonym for crying. Oh, she bawled her eyes out. Now, a moose is another 4-legged animal. It's that great big animal with big, big horns. But if it's spelled MOUSSE, it's the stuff that women put in their hair to make their hair, lovely. So. Okay, let me read one more verse and then we're going to talk about some troubling homophones. See how they're funny and silly and punny, like, oh, great, let's grate some more cheese. The fun doesn't lessen as you laugh through each lesson, so why don't you make some of these? Okay, so here's some homophones that people often have trouble with. We've already talked about there, and there, so I'm not going to repeat that. We've also talked about your and your. So let's talk just a little bit about here and here. So HEAR is what you do with your ears. And HERE is the place where you are now. So that's one to kind of watch out for. This is a verb and a noun that are used a lot, so watch out for them. Two, and two. So this is an adjective. This is, well, I don't even know what they are, but if you're going to use them correctly, let me see where my examples are. Yes, you want to give something to a person, 2 is the number of, and this is a synonym for also. So I had some examples, but I can't find them, so we'll just go on. This is another one that you find misused a lot, it's and its. The only difference here is the apostrophe. So we know from the apostrophe that that means it's possessive. So here's an example. The Sistine Chapel, its beauty is something to behold. It's like peeking into heaven. So first, its beauty. Actually, this is the possessive. Yeah, the possessive does not have the apostrophe. Made a mistake. We'll move on. This is the contraction, meaning it is. So let me say the sentence again. The Sistine Chapel, its beauty is something to behold. It's like peeking into heaven. It is like peeking into heaven. So last time when we were doing that synonym practice, when I asked you to put in to give me a synonym for Mary, Dr. Algarhi said marriage because he heard Mary and he thought of this word. So there are 3 words that sound like Mary. One is M-E-R-R-Y, and we've already talked about how that means happy and joyful and cheerful and gay. Marry, the synonym for that would be like wed, that you marry a person. And this is a proper noun. It's my name. And so we could say he is to marry, meaning he's just over the top. I can't wait to marry my sweetheart. And there are 2 Marys in our class. So each of these sentences uses to and marry, but they're spelled different ways because they mean different things. Okay, hope that's clear. I want to tell you a story about a problem with a homophone. This is a story that my sister told me when I was on vacation last year. And it has to do with the word whale, whales and whales. So the story goes that there was a man brought into the emergency room of a hospital. He was all beaten up and bloodied and so on. And the doctor said, "What happened to you?" And the man says, "Well, all I can remember is that I was at a coffee shop having coffee. And at a nearby table, I overheard some women talking, and they seemed to be talking with a beautiful British accent. So on my way out, I stopped at their table and I said, 'You lovely ladies must be from Britain.' And one of them looked at me and said, 'Wales, you idiot, Wales.' And he said, 'Oh, pardon me, I'm so sorry. You Wales must be from Britain.' And that's all I know. I ended up here in the emergency room." I find that story very funny. It's hard to tell a joke on Zoom because nobody laughs. But I hope you get the idea that Wales and Wales, are different words. And this poor man didn't know if somebody was saying Wales or Wales. So he got beaten. So be careful about your homophones. Let's move on to homographics. Homographics are spelled the same, but pronounced differently. And this is where English, is just incredibly odd, because let's take this word, B-A-S-S. It can be pronounced bass, which is a type of fish, or it can be pronounced bass, which is a deep sounding voice. Or also a bass is a guitar that you play. Or in this sentence, a bass was painted on the head of the bass drum. So it's spelled the same, pronounced differently. Let's look at another one. Bow or bow. If we say bow, that means to bend down in respect. But if we say bow, it could be the front of a ship or, a decorative knot that we put in our hair or our tie. So same word, two pronunciations. Here's another one. Close. Well, let me do close means to shut a door. Close means to be near. So we could say they were too close to the door to close it. Here's another word, D-O-V-E. It's a kind of bird, or that's a dove, or dove, to go into the pool head first. So when shot at, the dove dove into the bushes. Here's one that is really troublesome. L-E-A-D. It can be pronounced lead, to go ahead of, or it can be pronounced lead, a metal that is found in pipes. So a sentence might be, he could lead if he would get the lead out. And get the lead out is another one of those acronyms, meaning, if he would just, put in a little more effort, he could lead. Here's a fun one, M-O-P-E-D. Pronounce moped, it means to be depressed. But pronounced moped, it is a motorized bike. So we could say she moped for weeks after her moped was stolen. So let me just pronounce these differently here. Minute is a tiny amount. Minute is a part of an hour. Present is a gift, or it could be the present time. Present is a verb meaning to introduce, exhibit, or show. Refuse means that you are not going to do something. You refuse to do it. But refuse is trash or junk that you put in a garbage pit. Sower is a person who sows, but sewer is a smelly underground pipe. And here's one. To tear is to rip, but a tear, same spelling, is water from the eye. So just a few more. This one I really want to talk about because it will trip you up. This word, R-E-A-D, can be pronounced as a verb both in the present and the past. Read or read. So you can say, I read a lot of books, or I read a lot of books. How do you know if that is pronounced read or read? You have to figure it out totally by the context. So it could be, last year, I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books these days. So when you find this in a sentence, you will not know if it's pronounced read or read until you figure out the context that it is used in. And the same with this one, somewhat. Live and live. Live is a verb, live is an adjective. So you might say, I live to see live performances. I'm not going to belabor these. Project and project is another one of these homographics. Object and object. Record and record. Desert and desert. So if you are deserting your post, that means you're leaving your post. Or if you're living in a place with no water, that's the desert. Now, if you were to add an extra S in here, it would be dessert, as in that sweet stuff that you eat. So actually 3 Dessert and desert are homographics, but dessert that you eat would be a homophone. So here's just a few more, I think, fun little homophones. The bandage was wound around the wound. The wind was too strong to wind the sail. We must polish the Polish furniture. I had to subject the subject to a series of tests. The insurance was invalid for the invalid. The buck, which is a male deer, does funny things when the does, which is a female deer, are present. Okay, so you can go back and read those and try to pronounce them. But they're fun, but they're confusing. Homographics. So let me just review here. Nym means word, or they say here it means name. Amber is a girl's name. Amber is a fossilized resin. So homonyms are words that are pronounced the same and maybe spelled the same, but they differ in meanings. So homophones, that means the same sound. Here and here, we talked about that. So homophones are words that are pronounced the same, but they're spelled differently. And of course, they're different in meaning. And then the homograph, like lead and lead, are words that are spelled the same, but are not pronounced the same, and they're different in meaning. So puns, which is kind of a form of humor, are often based on homonyms, homophones, and homographs. For instance, here's a little pun by Brian Cleary. It says, "My dad went into business. My college fund he spent. He bought a perfume company, but hasn't made a cent." So he's playing off the idea that perfume is something that you smell, and perfumes are made with scents. So if it was simply money he was talking about, it would be C-E-N-T. But when he spells it as an S-C-E-N-T, that's because he's in the perfume business. He hasn't made a scent. That is, he hasn't made a perfume. Okay. All right, so I'm going to give us a little poll here. And Ahmed, I don't see where the poll is here. Am I just overseeing it? I have a Q&A chat participants. I don't see poll. All right, we're not going to do a poll because something is going on with my Zoom. So
Click here. Check if you can click here to see one. No.
Okay, this is fine. I've got two great moderators, so would you just unmute yourself and we'll just go over this little quiz. So the first,
I have polls on mine. I can do it from here.
okay, go ahead. Why don't you launch the poll?
All right.
Poll number one.
I
Okay.
started. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So first question is, from right here, I can hear the speakers well. So is the first one here or here? Oh, actually, this poll is not going to work because we have two times that we need to do the here. So actually, Joanna, would you just go ahead and click out of that poll? So, Sarah.
Yes.
The first time, is it H-E-A-R or H-E-R-E from right here?
It's the second one.
H-E-R-E. It's the place. From right here, I can hear the speakers well. What is the second one, Sarah?
The second one is the verb to hear, which is the first one. H-E-A-R. Yes.
Exactly. Okay. From right here, H-E-R-E, I can hear H-E-A-R, the speakers well. Very good. Okay. Joanna, second one. Please give 2 muffins to Charles. Which 2 belongs in that sentence the first time?
First one is the third two.
TWO. Yep, 2 muffins. We want not 1, but 2. Yep. And the second one?
And to Charles, the first.
Yes. Okay. 2.
Yeah.
We're giving it to Charles. Exactly. Okay, back to you, Sarah. It's a long way to Tipperary. This is a famous song. I don't know if you know it, but it was a World War I song. It's a long way to Tipperary, which I believe is in Africa. So, Sarah, is it the ITS without the apostrophe or the IT apostrophe S?
It's with the apostrophe. It's
Yes,
the
because
contraction.
Right, it's contraction. It is a long way to Tipperary. Okay, here's our Mary, Mary, Mary. Joanna, I will marry my sweetheart next spring. Which one of those Marys is correct?
Second choice.
The second one,
Marry.
M-A-R-R-Y, yes. And one of the ways to remember that is marriage, M-A-R-I-A-G-E would be the M-A. Yeah. Okay, back to you, Sarah. A Muslim prays 5 times a day. Which one of those words is correct?
It's the first one.
Exactly. Very good. P-R-A-Y-S. And Jomana, I see that the sea is very rough today.
I see it's the second one, S-double-E, that the C-S-E-A is very rough today.
Perfect. And Sarah, I'm hoarse from talking about that racehorse all day.
Okay, so the first one is the first choice, and the second one is the second choice. Yes.
Very good. Yep. H-O-A-R-S-E means you've strained your voice. Yep. Talking about that 4-legged racehorse. Very good. Okay. So we finally get to the verbs. So a verb, as I said before, is a word that shows action or a state of being. And here's a little cartoon that says, you've got to learn about verbs. How else are you going to verbalize your feelings? I'm pulling now on a book by Brian Cleary called To Root, to Toot, to Parachute. What is a verb? So he says in that book, to root, to toot, to parachute, to play the flutophone or flute, to dare, to defend, to descend, to disturb. If it's an action, it's a verb. So we're talking here about the simplest form of a verb. It's known as the base, the stem, or the plain or simple form. And this is how verbs are listed in dictionaries without any tense. And the reason I've been putting off talking about verbs is it gets very complicated when you start talking about tenses. But we're talking now just about the most simple form. And what you have here, to root, to toot, to parachute, is called the infinitive form of the verb. A verb, the base that is preceded by the word to root, to toot, to parachute is the infinitive of the verb. As I said before, verbs reflect actions that happen in time, present tense, past tense, future tense, and continuous action. So verbs are words like sing and dance, pray or practice, preach or prance, toss and tumble, jump and jam, whine and whisper, sleep and slam. So wrap a package, tie a knot, clap your hands or cry a lot, triumph, tremble, trot and trample. You'll use a verb for each example. So in the present tense, you can have an affirmative sentence, a question, or a negative. So in the first person, I talk. Do I talk? I do not talk. If you're talking to someone else, you talk. Do you talk? You do not talk. He, she, or it talks. I don't know what it would talk, but maybe a computer. Does he, she, or it talk? He, she, or it does not talk. In the first person plural, we talk. Do we talk? We do not talk. And lastly, they talk. Do they talk? They do not talk. So those are just some ways that you can use the present simple verb tense. Let's look at the past. The simple past tense describes an action that has been completed. And if English were just really simple, all you would do is add ed to the end of your verb to indicate that it's an action that happened in the past. So I walk today, but I walked yesterday. We play today, but we played yesterday. But if you get a verb that like that ends in an E, you're not going to double the E, so you just add a D. So I like peanuts. I liked them better yesterday than today. I moved forward today, and I moved to a new apartment last year. So if you have verbs ending in a consonant plus a Y, you would change the Y to I and add ed. So carry turns to carried. Study turns to studied. And then if you have a verb that ends in a consonant, you double the consonant and add ed. So plan ends in an N, that's a consonant. So when you are adding ed, you just double that consonant, planned. Same with stop, stopped. One of the, there are such things called auxiliary verbs, and I'm not going to get into that a lot, but Brian Cleary does give us a little bit of information about auxiliary verbs, so let's just take a look at it. A verb can be a form of be, like you are tall and I am free. That is fun and it's been great. Weren't you the one who was so late? I am Shannon, he is Mort. Were you the one who was in court? There are times a form of be is all that's needed verbally. So be is one of those verbs that changes a lot. And so I want to just go over. In the present tense, you would say I am, we are, you are, same here, whether it's singular or plural, he or she or it is, and they are. In the past tense, I was and we were, you were, both singular and plural, he, she, and it was, and they were. Then in the future, we're looking at I will be, finally we get the be back in there, we will be, you will be, he or she, it will be, and they will be. So this is one of those verbs that is pretty tricky in English, and it just is used a lot, so you just have to kind of memorize how it's used. Let's talk a little bit about future tense. The simple future is usually expressed by placing will or shall in front of a base verb. But there are other ways to express the future. So let's just look. This is a bunch of technical terms. I will go. So go is the base verb. You put will in front of it. That means the future. I am, or I'm going tonight. I'm going to go. This is the infinitive. Going to is another way of indicating future. Or just the simple present, I go, with a word that says it's in the future. I go tomorrow. So there are a few ways to to express future tense. The perfect tense is when you use a verb with an auxiliary called have. So the perfect tense indicates an action that occurred before the most recent action, but only slightly in the past. So most often this tense is formed by to have plus a verb in the past perfect tense. So this is where, it starts feeling like you're going down a rabbit hole. So I'm going to go on because we're not going to complete everything that I prepared today. But this is called, the past perfect tense, and it uses past participles. And if, again, English were really simple, it would be I accept, I accepted in the past, and I have accepted. I agree, I agreed in the past, and I have agreed. All these simply, add the ed. They're exactly the same in the past, and in the present participle, you just have to add the have or has or had. But here's a slew of words where the past participle, is not at all easy to figure out. Swim, swam, swum. Teach, taught, taught. Here's one, put. It doesn't change at all. Same with, this one. I run today, I ran yesterday, I have run. Again, we need a whole course to go over these, so I'm just indicating here that this is a part of verbs that you will need to master at some point in your English. So let's just have a little fun here. Again, a poem by Brian Cleary. If it is true I sit today, but yesterday I sat, could it be said I bit today, but in the past I bat? Nope. And with that bat, if I should hit, shall it be said I have hitten? Or if that bat should bite me, you can bet your butt I'm bitten. And if that bite should mend itself, one might proclaim I'm healed. But people ask me how it felt, and never how it feeled. So that's just a little poem to say about how crazy the English language is. So for our final little thing we're going to do today, here's another little poem by Bruce Lansky. And let's just see if we can figure out the past tense of these verbs here. So I'm going to go back to you, Sarah and Joanna. So unmic, and let's start with you, Jomana, this first time. It said, last night I something the sneezes. What is the past tense of have for this sentence?
I had the sneezes.
Last night I had the sneezes, H-A-D. And so Sarah, something really very ill. What was to be in the past?
I was really very ill.
I was really very ill, W-A-S. Okay, Johanna. My mother, what's the past tense of call?
Called.
C-A-L-L-E-D. Yep, one of those words you just add E-D to. My mother called the doctor, Sarah, and the doctor did what? Again? Okay, so here we added ed. Here we're just going to add a d because it already has an e. So Prescribed, prescribed, a purple pill. Jomana, at 8 o'clock, how did you go to bed?
Went to bed.
At 8 o'clock, I W-E-N-T, went to bed. Sarah, my mom
switched off the lights.
Okay, switched. Again, we're adding ed, S-W-I-T-C-H-E-D, switched off the light. Jomana, the past tense of use.
I used.
Okay, again, is a verb that ends with an E, so we're just adding a D, U-S-E-D. I used a whole box of tissues sneezing through the night. So Sarah, how do you make sneeze past tense?
Sneezed.
Yep, add a D. I sneezed my brains out in my bed. And Jomana, the past tense of do.
Did.
Yeah, I did, D-I-D. I did not get much rest. So that's the reason, teacher, that I, Sarah, what's this? Failed, E-D, I failed my midterm test. Good going, you guys. So that's all I'm going to do. I did have a section on adverbs that I will leave. You can get it on the PDF. And if you want to learn about adverbs, that's another thing that I find really difficult. But maybe it'll be a breeze for you. So I forget which one of you are ending the session.
Yeah, I guess that will be me. So thank you so much, Doctor, for this enjoyable lesson, talking about basically going through verbs, adverbs. You say that you will publish that later, but thank you so much for the great lesson. And I will also thank Joanna for introducing you as well and being a moderator for this today's lesson. I really enjoyed this lesson, and I would also thank our participants for being present today. So that's all what we have for today. In case you missed our previous lesson, make sure to go to our Madrasati YouTube channel to make sure you review the session and pass the test and the final exam, so you will be having your certificate at the end. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. And thank you again, Doctor, for the amazing presentation. And we have the honor being with you and having you with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ebenhack. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.